Hello, and I would say good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure what time you'll be watching this, but I am so excited to be here with you today. And we're going to have this incredible conversation. It's going to be short and sweet, and you're going to learn a lot from Cassie Scruggs from Sylvamo. I'm Amy Conover, by the way, with How Design, and I wanted to have this conversation with Cassie because Sylvamo has been a partner and sponsor of ours for many years, but they have recently gone through what many of you have gone through and will go through, which is a brand story creation. So I would love for you just to introduce yourself quickly, Cassie, and we'll kick this conversation off.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. And Amy, thank you, by the way. Very excited to talk about our brand and all the exciting things we've done the last year with our brand. So I'll start by saying I'm Cassie Scruggs. I am the corporate brand manager for Sylvamo. We are the world's paper company, in case you didn't know. We are about a 1-year-old company. We just had our first birthday, October 1. We celebrated here in Memphis, Tennessee at our new headquarters. I'll stop there for a second and let Amy interject if she wants. I do want to say one thing really quickly, though, just a little bit about us, because I know that you mentioned that we've been with Hal for many years. Mm-hmm. So just to kind of touch on that a minute, we are a previous company under International Paper. We spun off from them a year ago and created Sylvamo. So we are our same brands, but a new company. And so we have our Memphis, Tennessee headquarters, global headquarters, and we have global company. We're a global company with operations in US, Europe, Brazil, and Russia as well.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And so more to come on that, absolutely. Okay. But yes, that's where, but that's our operations. And we just turned the ripe age of 1.
Yes.
We're excited about it.
1 candle on the cake.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm a word nerd, and I would love for you to tell us about the name Sylvamo. So how did it surface and what does it mean? Because I think that's very interesting and will be interesting to our audience.
Absolutely. So it took us about, I want to say 6 months. We worked with an agency to come up with a name with our branding. And from what I understand, I wasn't on board yet with Sylvamo in that very early work. I was still with International Paper. A lot of us were. Mm-hmm. So from my understanding, there was a lot of discussion about what to call the company. So we landed on Sylvamo, and Silva is a Latin word for forest, and amo means love in Latin. So we translate it as love of forest, which tells our story immediately.
Right. I think that, and that's what I love about the name. I mean, initially it's like, okay. So I think having that understanding explains it all, like you said, without even explaining the story. But you will want to explain that story, I'm sure. But so, Casey, one thing, or, several things that I think are really interesting, but what I'd love for you to do is, tell us, this had to be a monumental task, right? Creating this brand at a Fortune company, and had to be eye-opening. So I would love to hear from you, some of that experience. Just tell us about it, and I know there was a lot of crossover, and I know that, just having a positive impact and making a difference is so important to you and to your team. So just tell us about that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I'll start with our number one challenge in building this brand. We had about 6 months once we got our logo in place, and that was like the mark of we could start changing packaging, we could start doing signage. We had about 6 months to do it. And so that goes, at the time, I knew it was fast, but I didn't know how fast. I don't think any of us do. We were just given this challenge. One of the big things that we wanted, which what I remember when I came on board, was we wanted our signage to be up across the country for day 1. Oh, wow. So, and at that point, our brand guidelines were still in process. So I know. So we like to say, we all say this when we were in this sort of throes of building the company, we were building the plane as it was taking off. And to reference the plane, so you'll see the Sylvamo logo, I'm sure, at when you get to HOW, it'll be presented in places. I know we have a booth there, but we have a logo mark that is the shape of a paper plane, and it's created from a single sheet of paper. So that's kind of where our analogy of building the plane while it's taking off came about.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh man,
So,
everything has a purpose.
yeah, absolutely. So yes, and it's just it was thought about throughout every step of the way. So back to kind of the number one, the hardest part of this was the time frame. So we had about a year to, get the company moving, and then about 6 months once our brand was built, or our logo was built. So you think about the big things that have to be done. You've got to do your signage. You've got packaging changes across the globe. I think for me, when I first came on board, I was approving hundreds of ream wraps in just the shortest amount of time. Right. So, and then building guidelines, that was one of my big first tasks to do, and thinking through signage for multiple locations across the globe and trying to give them that consistent look and feel so that everyone knows you're on a Sylvamo facility, from US to all the way to Brazil. So, and then not to mention, when you're a new company, you're building things like you don't have one single photo for a new company, as you're starting it. You're thinking through your culture. What's that going to look like? How are you going to present that to your employees? Your recruiting platform, your safety platform, because we work in an industry that has facilities where they work around dangerous equipment. So safety is our number one priority, and something that we want to get in front of our employees and have that safety messaging and a whole initiative around it so that they feel safe every day when they come home or when they go to work. So thinking through building a new brand and having your hand in every one of those pieces, all the way down to creating merch and swag for your company, for your new employees and for your customers, building out welcome kits so customers know who we are, videos so they know who we are, and having that vision, mission, and values in place, and teaching that audience about that from day one. Those have all been, and our employees are a part of that too. So those have been big sort of monumental pieces that we've been involved in from a branding perspective, from, the planning phase till actually shooting the videos and the finishing part. And, it's when you think about branding, you think about consistency, you think about, what does each audience want to hear about your new company? So you're a big piece of telling people who you are in each step.
Yeah. I would think the education process had to be monumental, we'll use that word as well, because people were familiar with the previous, the previous brand and the previous name. So tell us a little bit about how, what impact that had within all these other tasks that you were assigned, which, were all very important, but, how did that play into it?
Absolutely. So a little bit about, let me think where I want to start on that. So thinking through our audience and thinking through who we want to be as a company, that's been a huge part, of course, of branding, but of this role, in every piece that we've created. So one of the things I like to tell people early on, our tagline is, we're the world's paper company.
Right.
What does that mean to our employees? What does that mean to our customers? What does that mean to potential employees? So I always told, in these early phases, when we're introducing customers, when we're introducing our employees to our brand, to think of that statement, especially from our employee base, and even onboarding agencies that helped us throughout designing collateral for us. Keep that statement in the back of your mind when you're doing anything, when you're talking to a customer, when you're when you're, if you're a customer service rep, if you're a brand manager, if you're in HR and you're talking to a potential hire, anything you do should be tied to that one statement. It's a big statement. It means a lot to us. We want to uphold that to all of our audiences. And I lost my train of thought for a second. When I'm thinking about creating things, like actually designing things for our brand, I think about that statement as well. And I think about our history, and I think about who we are as Sylvamo. So I always like to onboard new agencies, or, I hired a new designer last year. So talking to her about the new brand and helping her, really understand us. We say we're a modern, fresh company. That's kind of our look. But then we also want to be classic. We don't want to lose those years of experience that we have, that our leadership has, that we have with International Paper, all that knowledge and education of the industry and our products that we have and know. And so we want to make sure we are showing that in everything we do. But we also want to be Sylvamo, and want to be new and fresh and modern, because we are doing things different.
Right.
Because we are we want to do things our way, the Sylvamo way, but not lose what we've learned and what we saw valuable with our predecessor.
Right. Right.
And one quick note too about choosing the color purple. So when we were thinking through a color scheme for our logo, and if you remember, International Paper was only black or white. That was the two colors. So we took this opportunity to really think through, let's be Sylvamo and let's have a color. So there was market research done around all of our competitors, and what colors they used in their branding. And we landed on purple because no one else had it. I always just thought that was a very interesting, research for coming up with our brand color.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the other things that I know is so important to Sylvamo is, is protecting the ecosystem and the forest. And I think that's, obviously a big point of conversation, sustainability. Do you have anything you want to add around that? Anything you want to share? Focuses or?
I do. So one project a big project that we just accomplished, and we had a different approach than we've had in the past. We filmed our paper making process from the forest to the end product.
Yeah.
This was done just a couple of months ago. And one of our big initiatives was to tell people our story and how to make paper. But I think most of all was to tell that sustainability story throughout each step of the paper making process, and really use it as an educational tool for people to understand that, yes, we do use a lot of natural resources, a lot of water, a lot of trees, but every bit of that, we return 95% of the water that we use back into the system, back into the lakes that we have our facilities by. It's gone through our system, it makes paper, and then it's cleaned and put right back into the environment. It's really an amazing story. And it was something that I learned along the way, more in depth than I knew before I did the video. And it was really interesting. I encourage everyone to watch it. It's on YouTube, on our Sylvamo channel. And it shows, one thing that was eye-opening to me as well is the massiveness of a paper mill and the paper making process. And then to that amazing sustainability story that we aim to get in front of many people as possible, to really help people understand that, yes, we do use natural resources, but trees are replanted every day. They're responsibly managed, forest are. And that's that amazing story of how much water, yes, that we use a ton, but we also return almost as much as we use.
Yeah. I love that you're telling the story. You're not just telling the story, right? You're showing the story and just the value of it from the video. So
absolutely. I mean, I'm telling you, the massiveness of a paper machine will blow, like almost blows your mind. I mean, it's like the size, it feels like the size of a football field. I can't remember the actual size that it is, but it is massive. And it's just this almost archaic looking, beautiful, actually, piece of machinery.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
Well, we'll include some of these links to some of the videos when we put this little video situation together. We'll put some links in there so people can have easy access to see some of those. Well, let me ask you, like, you know, you had to go in, I would assume, I would go into this thinking, I don't want to mess this up. Like, this is a really, really, really big deal, and I don't want to mess this up. But there's so much, to it. So, what lessons did you learn around that? Or
I
did you
mean,
have that fear? Maybe that's just me.
whew,
I don't know.
absolutely. Well, okay, so back to, the time frame. We had this short amount of time to do everything. So you're like moving at lightning speed the entire time. I just remembered in the very beginning how frightened I was at first, not about the job. I was so excited about taking on this role, but to make a mistake, being a new brand, having this tagline of "We're the world's paper company." How could I possibly make a mistake? It felt like it wasn't.
The world makes it really big. I'll just say
It was like it felt like I had a lot on my shoulders, right?
Yeah.
So, and this too was this is my first very big brand role like this. I've been around the IP brand for 10 years. And I was in graphic design building brands before that, but this was my first time to be on that ground floor of building something from day one, which was so exciting, but also a little bit terrifying at times. So, I think for me, I loved having my hands creating something from the beginning. I hadn't had that on this scale before, so that was really exciting to me. I think my biggest, like, sort of time out for myself was taking a step back in a very busy time and giving myself the grace to say, you're going to make a mistake. And guess what? You're going to be okay. Your team believes in you. The brand's going to live on. It's going to be okay. It's not going to disappear. And allowing myself kind of to have that clear head and knowing that no one expected me not to ever make a mistake, but also learn from it. Like, that's the number one thing I can tell everybody. Learn from that mistake and just don't repeat it. You're not going to murder your brand. It's going to be okay.
That's a good lesson.
I think after I sort of let my shoulders drop from that and kind of get in my seat a little bit and feel like my team was behind me, they had all the confidence in me. That made me settle in and feel like I really kind of had the wheel, like was in the driver's seat and felt like I was going to do a good job. And I feel like with our brand, we still have a long way to go. We're a baby, but we've done a ton in a year.
You have,
once that logo came out, creating this paper making video, that was a huge feat. Getting all these amazing foundational work for our company set up, getting every ring we had in our company. We have 18 brands, I believe is our number. That I don't believe that's changed since day one, but getting hundreds of rings rebranded before, in a 6 months time. So we've done, getting the messaging out to our customers, to our employees, giving customers and employees the confidence to know who we are and knowing who we are and feeling good about who we are. I do feel like in a way we've only scratched the surface. There's a lot more to go, but we've made giant strides in a short amount of time. So I love our lean team. We are a lean company at this point. I look forward to us growing and seeing where our brand goes. And I think one thing too is being in a new brand and even watching it evolve. You're given this beautiful set of guidelines from early on, but giving a set of guidelines, like, it's meant to be interpreted and it's meant to be catered to an audience. So it morphs along the way. And I think too, a good lesson for people is I was very strict in the beginning with my guidelines and learning them and kind of taking them, when I was educating people on them and using them as a guideline for my own personal work, and then for our graphic designer and for our agencies and our employees, is being very literal with them at first and being very strict as far as this is what we can and can't do. But then also, as you grow and develop and you see the needs of the people that you work with, your businesses, your employees, your departments, and knowing how to, I won't say bend them. What's a better word? Morph them, I think.
Right.
It's not that you're breaking rules, but you're making you do rewrite the rules a little, and you know how to implement them in ways where you're preserving the brand, your voice, what you look and feel like, but you're making it make sense to the audience or the employee or to the initiative. And there's a lot of that going on at this phase because we've kind of gotten through the introduction, and there'll be more of that to come, but we've kind of been able to put that, to rest a little bit and kind of move on to phase 2. And I think we're about at a 3 phase right now as far as what we'll see our branding. Phase 1 was to launch. Phase 2 is kind of internal, and then phase 3 will be more external facing. We'll go through at some point a phase of actually less of a reskin with the logo on our rings, but more of a looking at all of our brands as a whole and creating a Sylvamo family of brands.
Awesome.
So that's a big piece to come. It may not be until another year. We don't know when it'll fit in because it is a big, large piece of work, but it's something that we'll look at kind of as our final phase 3 and kind of go back to that piece because we started there and we'll have to go back to it and revisit it. So it's all been a whirlwind and exciting. Lots of lessons learned, and I hope I've given y'all a few in this video that have been helpful, that have been helpful to me, and in hindsight I think will be helpful to other designers.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's been a wild ride, y'all, but it's been so fun. I've enjoyed all the late nights, all the early mornings, and just the long hours, but just getting my hands into something at this early phase has been amazing for me. And I think for everybody at Sylvamo in their jobs, it's just been this opportunity that I don't think that everyone gets at this. Like, you don't always get this opportunity to be on the ground floor of a major brand. So
sounds like you've made the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation, Casey. I'm going to have to wind it down here. But I've brought from this, it's been monumental, but through it, you've had this single-minded focus, which has kept everybody aligned while you were morphing, and just giving yourself grace to understand that we all make mistakes.
I'm so sorry.
I think your dog's
yes. I apologize. I'm
Casey. No, good. Thank you so much. I'm sure again, maybe this format, hear more stories later. And until then, everyone have an incredible day.
Well, thank you for having me, Amy. I've really enjoyed this. And Dolly, thanks you too, obviously.
Thanks, Dolly. Bye-bye.
Thank you.